Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson on secondary sources of data, and we're going to be looking at validity and reliability. So this is for Unit 4, which is inquiries into current research in health and social care, and this is our fourth lesson. You can pause this video at any time you want if you want to go back on any of the slides or just re-listen to anything that I've just said. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to continue looking at secondary sources of data and how you can use these effectively. You should have all completed that recall activity which I'd set on Nearpod, so well done for doing that. So what we're going to move on to is looking at learning outcomes 2 and 3. So we're going to be explaining the meaning of a reliable and valid secondary source of data, and then we're going to assess the validity and reliability of at least 3 secondary sources of data. Now, as I said, I will be setting tasks throughout this video, so you will need to pause the video, but I'll put a little message on the top of each of the slides when I want you to pause the video, so that is your cue to pause. Right, okay, so as I just said, you've all completed the activities on Nearpod. Therefore, you've successfully recalled key learning from the previous 3 sessions. So that Nearpod was asking you questions about the exam, and then a couple of questions about qualitative and quantitative data and different other data types. So well done for doing that. What we're going to do now then is move straight on to looking at outcome 2. So outcome 2 is to explain the meaning of a reliable and valid secondary source of data. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about these different viewpoints around the following issues in health and social care. So issue 1 is abortion and mental health. So can abortion lead to mental health issues? The second issue is, should TV commercials for alcohol and fast food be banned? The third issue is smacking children. People have lots of different views on this. There is legislation surrounding smacking children as well, but this is an issue in health and social care. And then the fourth issue is a very controversial issue. Should a doctor be able to provide medical care to a minor despite their parents' wishes? So, for example, if a doctor were to provide medical care to a child who was aged 8 and the parents did not consent to that treatment being given, would this become an issue? What are the ethics surrounding it? So what I would like you to do with those 4 statements is, for each one, write down 3 different views that you think people might have towards the issue. And I don't want you to use the internet for this. I want you to think for yourselves. You will get the chance to use the internet a little later on in the lesson. So take each one and write down 3 different views that you think people might have towards the issue. And what I want you to do is pause this video now for about 10 minutes whilst you complete the activity. So if you all want to pause it now. Okay everybody, welcome back. I hope you completed that task okay. So with regards to the task I just asked you to do, you can probably see that there's lots and lots of different viewpoints on many different issues within health and social care. Some might be a viewpoint for an issue, some might be against it, some may be kind of neutral, neither for nor against, but there are many different views. And what it's important for you to remember is that these are just viewpoints and opinions. We've all got a different view, we've all got a different opinion on many different things. Some opinions we'll share with other people, some opinions will differ from other people, but we all have different views. Something else to remember is how these viewpoints might affect other individuals. So in particular, if you're working in health and social care and you've got very strong views towards abortion, then you've got to think about the implications of your views if you were to impose them on other people. Okay? The same applies when we're carrying out research. So when we want to find out viewpoints and opinions, we've got to consider where the viewpoints come from. And this helps us determine how reliable and how valid the views are. So what I want you to think about now is the viewpoints that you wrote down for each of the issues raised on slide 5. So some of those were quite controversial issues, and I want you to now use the internet or any other resources that you might have available. So books, journals, magazines, anything you've got lying around the house which might give you access to information. And I want you to find examples of research that support your viewpoints on the issues. So for each of those 4 issues on slide 5, you would have written down 3 different viewpoints. I want you to go and find examples on the internet or from various other resources that might support the views that you found. What I want you to consider when doing this is make a note of what the research suggests. So when you've found research that supports your viewpoint, just write a little summary of what it says. I then want you to try and find the methods that the researchers used to find the information. So for example, if you were searching for different viewpoints on abortion and you found a summary of a report which was based on a questionnaire that was filled out by people asking for their opinion on abortion, then the research method used for that would be a questionnaire. So I want you to find the methods that the researchers used to help find the viewpoint. And then I also want you to make a note of the source of the information. So who it came from, when it was found out, and where it came from. And I want you to pause the video now for about 20 minutes whilst you complete this activity. Okay, and welcome back to the lesson. So you should have all completed that task now, where you looked at finding secondary sources to support your views on the 4 issues that were raised on slide 5. So you might be asking now the question, what is the point of all this research? You know, why do we need to bother carrying out research if we can think of things for ourselves? Well, research into health and social care issues should always involve exploring different aspects of an issue. So it's not acceptable for you to just think, well, this is what I think about it, this is what they think about it, end of. Okay, you need to be exploring different aspects of an issue. So you can't rely on just one viewpoint. So as a researcher, you are expected to gather data from a range of different sources and try and explore the issue or the research topic in lots and lots of detail. And you're expected to look at all the information that you've gathered and to use that to come to a conclusion. But your conclusion must be based on the arguments that you've developed through your research. So research is a massive thing, you know, it's really, really important. So there's some key terminology that you need to be aware of when you are completing research using secondary sources. You need to be aware of the validity and the reliability of the data and the information that you find. Now, you should have all written about this in the essays that you completed for me last week when I asked you to write 300 words on what makes a secondary source of information valid and reliable. So you should have a good idea of what this means already, but I have put some key terms on here for you. So the term validity refers to the way that we measure the quality of data, information and concepts, and how well that claims made are supported by evidence. And reliability is a measure of the quality of the methods that have been used to obtain data and the extent to which the same results will be obtained if someone else repeated the research using identical methods. So I'll just go over those again with you to make sure you are clear on what they mean. When we talk about the validity, what we're actually looking at is the quality of the data, the information and the ideas that have been suggested and how well they are supported by evidence. So if you are going to make a claim about something, you have to be able to back it up with evidence. If you can back it up with evidence, then this means your research is going to be valid. Reliability, on the other hand, looks at how reliable the methods used to obtain the data are. So, for example, if you were to find your information out from a questionnaire, you would have to assess whether or not a questionnaire was the most suitable and most applicable type of research to be used to find the information out. And also, what makes it reliable is if you could repeat that same research using exactly the same methods and still come back with the same results. So that's validity and that's reliability. You can read up a little bit more on those key terms as well, because that would help you with this unit. So when we're looking at our data and we're trying to find out whether or not we think it's valid and whether or not we think it's reliable, there are quite a few things to consider. And I've bullet pointed some of these on here for you now, and I want you to do some reading around these. So the first thing we'll be looking at is who collected the data. So, was it an individual? Was it a group of people? Was it an organisation? And then we'll be looking at what is the data provider's purpose or goal. So what was the point of the research? What was the research trying to find out? What was its goal? We also need to be aware of when the data was collected. If we're looking at something historical, then we'd need to see data collected from the time that we're going back to. So, for example, if we were looking at treatments for schizophrenia in the 1930s, we would want to look at data that was collected around about then. However, if we were then comparing it to treatment nowadays, we would need to look at data that had been collected in 2019 and 2020, so we could do a compare and contrast. We'd also need to look at how the data was collected. So what methods was collected? Sorry, what method was used to collect the data? We'd also look at what type of data was collected. So we'd look at, is it consistent with data from other sources? Has it been peer reviewed? Does it provide plenty of detail? Is it from a reputable website? Is it based on fact? Is it based on opinion? Is it based on evidence? So these are all things that we would need to consider if we are looking at the validity and reliability of our data. Now, it might sound a little bit contradictory, but when you are looking for valid and reliable secondary sources, you need to make sure that they are crap. Now, I know it might sound the complete opposite, but the term crap actually refers to a particular way of analysing your data. And I've got a video on the next slide for you to watch, which talks you through crap. Sorry about this. Right, here we go. Here's the video.
When you're trying to figure out if a source is appropriate to use, there's an easy way to check. CRAP. CRAP stands for the 5 things we are looking for in a source: currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. Currency refers to the date when a source was created, either when an article or book was published or when a website was last updated. The date of publication may or may not matter, but it's important to know if you need something current. Relevance is probably the criteria that you'll think to look for first. Namely, does this information relate to the topic I want to write about? Relevance also addresses if your information is written at the right level and who the intended audience is. Authority asks who wrote and published the article. Most articles should include the credentials of their author, sometimes the institute or department where they work, and in some cases, contact information. The next letter stands for accuracy. You want to make sure that the work you are pulling information from is legitimate and that any claims that work makes are supported by evidence. The easiest way to check this is to look at who the article has cited. Make sure they are using academic sources, or at least legitimate ones. The final criterion is the purpose of the article. Think about why it was written and what the author wants to accomplish. Some authors or publishers might present only one side of an argument, meaning that they are biased to present information in a specific way. Keep this in mind when choosing sources. After looking through these criteria, you should have a better idea if your source is acceptable or not. And just remember, the more research you do, the easier evaluating resources will get.
Okay everybody, so that's quite an informative video which tells you how to evaluate resources. So always remember, if your resource is crap, then it's actually good. I've got another video now on the next slide which I want you to watch, which shows how you can evaluate secondary sources a bit further. So this is another version of how to evaluate sources for reliability.
Evaluate sources for reliability. When you research a topic, it's important to use reliable sources. Reliable means credible, trustworthy, and objective. Finding reliable sources is extremely important to ensure that we understand the whole truth about the topic we're researching. Only then can we provide the most accurate information to our audience. It can be difficult to determine the reliability of a source because sources can fall within a range of reliability. Some sources are completely unreliable, and others are highly reliable, but there are many sources that fall somewhere in between. There are a few ways you can assess the reliability of a source to determine how you should use it in your research or if you should use it at all. First, determine the author or publishing organization. It's important that the author is an expert on the topic. Try to learn more about the author's education and experience in the field. It's also important to determine the author's purpose. Is the sole purpose to inform and educate the reader, or does the author also want to persuade, entertain, or sell something to the audience? Some authors and organizations may be biased. This means the author has such strong feelings or beliefs about a topic, they might ignore conflicting evidence. A biased source may present information that is inaccurate, incomplete, or one-sided in order to persuade the audience to feel a certain way. Sometimes authors may even disguise their writing as informative while actually trying to influence the reader's opinion on a topic. Even educational, nonprofit, governmental, and news organizations can seem reliable but may have an underlying agenda. An agenda is what the organization is trying to accomplish. It's important to recognize the agenda of an organization and seek a variety of sources on the same topic to find the objective truth. Look for common information between sources and references that provide evidence to verify authors' claims. In some cases, it's helpful to consider the date of publication of a source. An original document created at the time of a historical event may be more accurate than a secondary source written years later. Information about current events can change quickly, so sometimes more recent sources have the most up-to-date and accurate information. Scientific understandings can change over time too, so it's important to be aware of any recent findings that may contradict previous conclusions. There are a few types of sources that are commonly unreliable. An advertisement trying to sell a product, service, or idea probably won't provide the most objective information. A personal blog will describe the beliefs or opinions of an individual, but it may not represent the broader consensus on a topic or have supporting evidence. And social media posts often spread biased, inaccurate, or sensational information to influence users' opinions on controversial topics. So, as you research a topic, evaluate each source to determine its reliability.
Okay everyone, so I hope you found that video quite informative as well, and it'll give you some ideas on how you can evaluate secondary sources further. So what I want you to do now is pause the video for 5 minutes while you complete this activity. So go on to Nearpod and the lesson code, please enter the lesson code for the knowledge test. I've put this on Teams for you, so on the message I've posted on Teams, the lesson code will be there. Complete the knowledge test and then return to this lesson to carry on. So if you all want to just pause now for 5 minutes, go and do that test, then come back to the video. Okay, well done everyone. So by now you should have a really good understanding of what a secondary source of data is and how to ensure the data you have obtained is reliable and is valid. So well done for that. So what we're going to do now is going to move on to the third outcome. So this is a final learning outcome for this lesson, where you're going to actually put what you've learned into practice. So you're going to assess the validity and reliability of at least 3 sources of data. So, like I said, it's now time for you to put into practice what you have just learnt. So I want you to go back to the issues that you researched at the start of outcome 2. So all those 4 issues on slide 5 that I asked you to find 3 viewpoints on, I want you to go back to those and I want you to assess the validity and reliability of the sources of the viewpoints that you found for each of the issues. So in simple terms, what I'm actually asking you to do is to weigh up how reliable the information is that you found. I want you to write your assessments up, and you can use the writing frame that I have provided on Teams for you to help you with this. Now I do know that this is quite similar to exercises that we've carried out over the past few weeks, but you really need to continue practicing researching, because the more you research, the better you will become at it, and practice does make perfect. Practice makes perfect. So if you do not finish this by the end of the lesson, then make sure it's completed for homework and sent to me via Teams. So just attach it to a message, or you can upload it to your folder on Teams. But I do want you to complete this for me. So you're going to take each of the issues that we looked at on slide 5 and all the viewpoints that you found relating to those issues, and you're going to tell me how reliable and how valid you think those viewpoints are. So based on the research that you've carried out. Okay, so what you need to do now is just end the video and then continue working on this task for me. I am here, I'm available on Teams until the end of the lesson. If you need to speak to me, just send me a message on Teams or send me an email. And I just want to go over a couple of things that we've done today, and then I'll let you get on with the rest of the lesson. So today we continue to look at secondary sources of data. So you did a quick recap activity where you looked at what was required of you in the exam and some various other questions related to what we've done so far, and you've all successfully done that, so well done. You also have explained the meaning of a reliable and valid secondary source of data, and you are about to assess the validity and reliability of at least 3 secondary sources of data. So well done everybody, good lesson. So what we're going to look at next week, and hopefully next week we'll all be back in college face to face, we're going to revisit the purpose and functions of research. And once we've done that, I'm going to then set a mock exam. So hopefully just before half term we can do a quick mock exam based on activity 1 or question 1 in the actual exam. Okay? Right, thanks for your time everybody. Any questions, like I said, just contact me on Teams and I'll give you time now to continue working on that research task.